Amen. Oh, I like to hear myself. Well, good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Well, good. I am not Pastor Rob. I am Pastor Duran, the associate pastor. Rob might preach better than me, but I look a lot better than him, so I'll take that. I do want to say good morning. So we are going to wrap up our series on And That's What It's All About. If this is your first time joining us, we've been in a series for a while now on the glory of God. And everything that we do, everything that we are, everything points to the glory of God. The story of Scripture points to the glory of God. Our lives point to the glory of God. Everything is for the glory of God. And so Rob asked me to share part of my story because I believe that God redeems our story for his glory. So I'm going to share some of my story with you. And it's a wild story. And so there are going to be some things that I say that my kids are going to ask me about, but I'm prepared for it. I knew they were going to be here, so I am definitely ready for that. So I was born in December 5th, 1983. December 5th. Yeah, that's me. I was a cute little baby. I was cute. December 5th, 1983. It was a Monday in the 1900s. Anybody born in the 1980s, 1990s? That was 1900s. We might as well go ahead and accept that. So I was born December 5th, 1983. The reason that is important, number one, is because it's December 5th. I love to celebrate my birthday. You can ask Rob. I'll take the entire week off, and I will celebrate my birthday. I love it. I do it all the time. But the other reason that this is important, so in 1983, I was born and I was a preemie. So the picture he just showed you, I was a 3-month-old preemie baby. And so I called my mom to get this story straight. And so I don't know how they calculate your age or whatever, but at that picture, I'm a lot older than 3 months, but since I'm a preemie, they only considered me 3 months. I was a tiny baby. I was born premature. My mom was pregnant with me, I think it was 6 months pregnant, so between week 24 through week 27. She's pregnant with me. She had no idea that I was going to come early. And so she gets rushed to the hospital, and they say, "You're not pregnant." And she's like, "No, I'm definitely pregnant." And then my mom's tiny. Okay, my mom is really small. She doesn't look pregnant. It was awful. But so they rush her to the hospital. They find out that I am in there, and I'm trying to get out because I'm stubborn. So I wanted to get out, and so I'm trying to push my way out. And so they had an emergency C-section to pull me out. This is in the 80s, born between week 24 through 27. Now, that's significant because when our daughter, when our daughter Zayla was born, we spent 52 days in the NICU, and we had this nurse called Mary Ellen. So Mary Ellen has been a NICU nurse since the 70s, so she's seen it all. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady. We loved her. The only time I would leave the hospital is if Mary Ellen was there. So one day, I'm talking to Mary Ellen, and I was like, I was also born premature. And she said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah, it was in 1983. I was born premature." And she said, "And you're still alive?" And so I laughed. I did laugh just like that. She said, "No, I'm serious." She said, "If you were a preemie in the 80s, you should have some type of physical defect or some type of learning disability. There is no way that there's nothing wrong with you at all." So that was in the 80s. I spent an entire year in the NICU in the 80s. And so my mom would come and visit me, and she would cry, and I get it now, but she would cry, and she was so torn because she didn't know. The doctors didn't think I was going to make it. They gave her no hope whatsoever. Luckily, I had a praying grandmother. She still prays to this day. The reason that I am here today, the reason that I'm a Christian today is because of my grandmother. She prayed a lot because of me, and I'm thankful for it now, and I'm sure she wasn't thankful for it then, but now she gets to see the fruit of that. But I was born in a time where my mom was struggling. I can say this now because she's been 16 years clean, but at the time, my mom was struggling with a really bad drug addiction. My father was nowhere to be found. I was born premature. The doctors gave her no hope whatsoever. That's how I came into the world. And I would love to say that it got better from there. Oh, that was the worst of my life. I was a preemie for a year, but I made it out. But that was not the worst. It just got worse from there. All the way up through age 10. So at age 10, we're living in Georgia. And at this point, I am an angry, lost, depressed kid. My mom is struggling with drugs, so she was having her issues. My dad was nowhere to be found. I felt hopeless. I felt like I had nothing going on in my life at all. And this is just at age 10. I'm carrying this around inside of me. I don't understand what's going on, but I don't feel like I belong. And then at age 10, I get molested twice. Age 10. And so more things happened that by the end of that year, when I was 10 years old, my grandmother had to adopt me and my brothers. Now, I don't have time to talk about my brothers. They're crazy, so we'll leave that for another time. But my brothers are wild. But just know that my grandmother adopted me and my brothers at age 10. I would love to say that my life got better from there, that my grandmother adopted us, and it just was all great. But have you ever tried to raise 5 boys in the house by yourself? It doesn't go like you think it's going to go. And so I was into this place where I was depressed and angry and sad, and I didn't know where to turn. By age 12, I am doing drugs, I'm drinking, I'm stealing, having run-ins with the cops. I didn't think I was going to make it. I expected to make it to maybe 21, 22 years old before I was either dead or behind bars. I didn't have any care for anything or anyone in my life because I was lost. I was depressed. I felt like I didn't have any value, like there was no one to care for me. What can God do with a messed up life? At age 10, all those things happen. At age 12, I'm sitting here messed up, and then I'm thinking it can't get any worse than this. There's no way that I can go any lower. By the age 16, I am sitting on a friend's couch, lost, afraid, alone. I thought that was the end of it, so I decided to try and commit suicide. Thank God it didn't happen. The gun would not go off. But I tried it. I attempted suicide. And I'm sitting here on the couch. I'm like, not even death wants me. Who wants me? Where is my value? Who am I? But God. So at 16, I get tricked into going to church. I say tricked. Some of you guys have heard this before. Some of you have not. I have a cousin. He tricked me into going to a concert. Okay, and he knew that I would not step foot into a church. And so he decided to drive, which I should have known that should have been the red flag right there because he never offers to do anything like that for free. But he offered to drive, and so he drives us up to the concert, and we pulled up in front of this building. It's a small white church, tiny, tiny building. He looks at me, he says, "We're here at the concert." I said, "No, we're not." He said, No, we're here. We're here. And I'm like, "No, we're not at this concert. There's no way I'm getting out of this car." So he laughs, he gets out of the car, and he goes into the building. I sit there what felt like forever. It was probably 10, 15 minutes at most, but I thought it was forever. And I was like, okay, there's no way this concert is going on that long. So I walk in, and I sit into the back row of the church. And there's maybe 20 people. It's smaller than our youth group. It was maybe 20 kids in the whole building, including the people that were singing and everything else. 20 people. But for the first time ever, I heard the gospel. Now, you gotta understand, I grew up around Christians. I grew up around people that went to church, but never in my life until the age of 16 did I hear the gospel message. Have you ever been there? Does your story ever come to that where you think that you don't matter? Or you might feel lost. Have you ever felt that way? You might feel that way now. But I'm here to tell you that God, if you allow him to, will redeem your story for his glory. If you have your Bible, turn to Judges chapter 6, and we're going to be looking at verses 11 through 14. Now, at this point in the history of the children of Israel, they have lost Moses and they have lost Joshua. So Moses was the guy all the way back in the book of Exodus that delivered the children of Israel out of slavery. 400 years of slavery, and this guy shows up and he delivers them out of slavery. So he is their man. Moses is their guy. Moses is supposed to lead the children of Israel to the promised land. He leads them up to the doorstep of the promised land, but then Moses did something that he was not supposed to do, so God did not allow him to come into the promised land. But God said, I'm not going to leave the children of Israel by themselves. I'm going to raise up another leader. Moses, I want you to anoint Joshua, which is the following book. I want you to anoint Joshua to lead them into the promised land. So Joshua leads the children of Israel into the promised land, and then about Judges chapter 2, Joshua dies. He finally dies. It says that he lived a good old age. He accomplished everything that God wanted him to accomplish, and then he died. A couple verses after that, it says that the children of Israel went back to doing what they wanted to do. They were doing what they thought was right in their own eyes. They were lost. They had no idea what to do, and so they would be punished because they would not obey what God said to do. And during that time, God would raise up judges, hence the name of the book. He would raise up judges to help deliver the children of Israel out of their punishment. That's going to bring us to Judges chapter 6. Now, in Judges chapter 6, they're dealing with a group of people called the Midianites. Now, the Midianites would come down every year for 7 years. They'd come down during harvest time. So harvest time is where they would have their crops and they'd have their animals, and that's how they made a living. That's how they sustained themselves. And the Midianites would come down every year for 7 years, and they would rob the land. They would take all the things they had for harvest. They would take all their cattle. They'd take it all. They'd strip the land completely clean. They did that for 7 years. That's going to catch us up to Judges chapter 6, verses 11 through 14. And I'm going to read that, and this is what it says. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." And Gideon said to him, "Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian." And the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you?" I'm going to share for a few moments why I believe that in this small interaction that we can see how God can redeem our story. And the first way that God redeems our story is he knows where we are. If you notice verse 11, it says very specifically, he went to the terebinth tree. But not just a tree. He said it was owned by Joash. It was owned by Gideon's father. He knew exactly where Gideon was. I don't know where you are in your story. I don't know how you feel right now, but I can guarantee you one thing. God knows exactly where you are. And then the angel continues to talk to him, and he says, "Mighty man of valor." Now, that's very, very interesting to me. It doesn't say, "I'm going to make you a mighty man of valor." It doesn't say you're going to become a mighty man of valor. It says you are a mighty man of valor. Now, valor means that you are courageous in the face of battle. When he runs into Gideon, Gideon is anything but courageous. He is hiding, trying to hide wheat in a winepress. A winepress is a very small space, and he's trying to hide himself and hide something so that it's not taken. If anything, he does not look like a mighty man of valor. But God knew where he was. God was able to find him in the middle of his story. God knows where you are. In the middle of my story, God found me at age 16 when I thought everything was said and done, when I didn't know where to turn, when I didn't know where to go. God knew exactly where I was. He wasn't looking for me. He didn't need GPS coordinates like I do because I can get lost in a brown paper bag, but he didn't need any of that. He knew exactly where he was. He knew the exact location. He knew where he was hiding. God is not surprised by your story. He's not surprised by where you are. He's not surprised to find out that you're struggling. He's not surprised to find out that you might be losing faith because God knows exactly where you are. God is not surprised by your circumstance. He's not surprised by your story. He knows you. He knows where you are. And so the angel of the Lord knew exactly where Gideon was. He didn't show up and say, "Gideon, why are you hiding in this winepress? Gideon, why are you afraid?" Those would have been my questions. "What are you doing here? Go out and fight." He didn't say any of those things. He shows up in the middle of his story. And that's the beautiful thing about God. We serve a God that's not far off. He is in the middle of our story. He sits with us when we are in pain. He sits with us when we are laughing. He sits with us when we are crying. God knows us because he knows where we are. So the first way that God can redeem our story, if you allow him to, is he knows where you are. Nothing about you, nothing in your story surprises God. He knows you. He knows where you are. Now, the second thing that happened in this story is you have Gideon, and he's talking to this angel, and he was like, "Where's this God been that we've been hearing about that's delivered us from all of these things? Where is he? I don't know this God that you're talking about. Where is he?" It's funny, the angel does not answer that question. When we jump to verse 14, the angel doesn't answer that question at all. The second thing that God does to redeem our story, if we allow him to, God knows your name. He knows who you are. He called him a mighty man of valor. And at that point, he looked anything but courageous. When God, okay, so just to be clear, I cry, and I try not to, but I was watching Encanto last night, or Encanto, and I cried. Okay, it was a Disney movie, so if I start crying, it's okay. But this part is very significant to me. And the reason it's significant was God knew his name. He called him a mighty man of valor. I don't know what kind of names you've been carrying around, but let me tell you some of the names that I carried around up until that point. Worthless, useless, damaged goods, afraid, hurt. I carried all that baggage, all that pain, unlovable. Because that's how I felt at the moment. I felt useless. I felt like I had no hope. I came into the world hopeless. I thought I was going to leave the world hopeless, but God found me in the middle of my story. Not only did he know where I was at, he knew my name. And so when I was in that small little white church trying not to go to this concert, God found me in the most unlikeliest of places, and then he gave me a name. And I will never forget the first time I've ever heard this. I go to the altar in this little white church, and I'm fighting it. I don't want to go, but I feel like something is pulling me there, and I'm starting to pray. I've never really prayed to God, but I'm praying like, I don't know if you're real. I don't know what this is, but I need this. And then all of a sudden, I start to cry. I'm talking about I am snotting, I am boo-hooing. I mean, it is a mess. And I couldn't get the words out because the first thing God ever said to me that I felt in my heart was, son, I've been waiting for you. He said that to a fatherless child. He said, son, I've been waiting for you. Do you know what that does to someone who was not raised by their father, someone who was lost, who's confused? It doesn't matter if you are a daughter or a son. If you don't have a father in your life, it leaves some type of gap. It leaves some type of hurt. And so God, the first thing he does, he acknowledged that hurt. He said, son, I've been waiting for you. Then he calls me loved. 16 years old. Never in my life have I ever felt like I was loved. Now, my grandmother, she raised us. She was a wonderful, wonderful woman. And I know the sacrifices she made now. But at that time, I didn't feel any love at all. Because I felt worthless. I felt useless. But God met me there. Not only did he know where I was at, he knew my name. So he forgot all those other names that I was carrying around. He didn't answer any of those questions. Why do I feel unlovable? Why? Where is my father? What's going on? He didn't answer any of those questions because he didn't have to. He was getting to the root of the issue. I know exactly who you are. You are my son. You are lovable. You are delivered. You are saved. Allow me to change your story. And so that night, I allowed God to change my story. He changed my name. He gave me the name that he really had for me in the beginning. I was always his son. I just didn't know it until I allowed him to redeem my story. I was always lovable, but I didn't know it until God redeemed my story. He took all of that pain, all of that hurt, and then he changed it in a second by always giving me a name. When God names something, it changes. Go back to the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 1, God and the Holy Spirit, they're over the face of the earth. It is deep. It is wild. It is chaos. God speaks, let there be. And he brings order to chaos. My life was chaotic. I shouldn't be here standing before you. It is a privilege that I get to do this. I love the fact that I'm here today, but anyone that knew me back then will tell you there is no way that he should be up here. I get phone calls and messages like that all the time. I'm like, what happened to you? God changed my name. And if you allow him to, God will change your name. What kind of names have you been carrying around? What has been the name you've been telling yourself over and over and over again? Maybe you feel like a failure. Maybe you feel like you don't matter. Maybe you feel unlovable. Maybe you feel like you've messed up so bad that there's no way that this God that we talk about can love you through that. But I'm here to tell you that yes, he can, because he knows where you're at, number one. But number two, he knows who you are. He knows your name. So I don't know what kind of name you've been carrying around, but I guarantee you that if you allow God to change your story, what he's going to do is he's going to change your name. So number one, he can redeem our story because he knows where we are. Number two, he can redeem our story because he knows our name. God finds Gideon hiding in a wine press, trying to run away from what's in front of him, trying to run away from his problems. And he doesn't show up and call him a failure. He doesn't show up and say, you're afraid. He calls him who he truly is. When God gave me that name, son, do you know it changed my life? Because I felt for the first time ever that I had a father. That does something when your name is changed. It did something for Gideon. You can read the rest of the story, but Gideon does not stay afraid. He does not stay in that place. He goes and he conquers Midianites. He conquers them. Why? Because God changed his name. He allowed God to redeem his story. I don't know where you are here today. I don't know your story. Your story might not look like my story, but I can guarantee you one thing. If you give God your story, he can redeem your story. So not only does God know where you are, not only does God know who you are, God has a purpose for you. God knows your why. Now, this one is really big for me. God knows your why. At the very end of the interaction with the angel, he said, "Do not I send you?" God, when did you send him? When did he know that he was supposed to go? God was speaking purpose to him. God was speaking purpose to him. Now, with everything that's going on in our world, do you know the biggest question that everyone has? Why are we here? What are we supposed to do? Is it just to accumulate wealth? Is it to have fun and then die? What is our purpose? What is our reason? Why are we here? The angel gave him his purpose. And for the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about the glory of God. Do you know what our purpose is? If you're a doctor, you really have one purpose. If you're a lawyer, you really have one purpose. If you're retired 2 or 3 times, you really have one purpose. If you're unemployed, you have one purpose. If you are a stay-at-home mom, you have one purpose. No matter what we do, our purpose here on this earth is to glorify God. Why? Because he does everything for his glory. The reason that you are here, the reason that you are breathing today is for his glory. The reason that you have a story is for his glory. The reason that you are not dead yet, the reason that you are still living, the reason that you are still breathing is for God's glory. No matter what you do, no matter where you are, our purpose is to give God glory. So if you allow God to take your story, he's going to show you something beautiful, because what's going to happen is he's going to take your story and he's going to put you into something much bigger than you could ever imagine. That's what he did for me, and I'm not special. I'm not special. I'm stubborn, but I'm definitely not special. Nothing about me is unique. God found me in Cleveland, Tennessee. The only reason people know where Cleveland is, number one, is for Lee University. Lee University was a great school. I loved it. Some went to Lee College. I went to Lee University. It was a great school. But that was it. That's all we had there. Small town. Not only that, I felt like I was the most worthless person in my family. I have great stories about my brothers that I won't be able to share now, but there's a time in my life where it was just me. In a house full of people, I felt like I was never seen, never heard, never valued. God knew where I was. Nothing in my life surprised God. And man, I thought that I had him surprised. I thought that I had a list for him. God, where is my father? What about that? God, where is that at? Why in the world was I abused? God, what is that going on? God, why do I feel lost? Why did I feel like I wanted to end my life? God, I need all of these answers. And yet he looked at me when he found me and said, no, you don't need any of those answers. What you need right now, what you need today is to know exactly who you are. So I'm going to change your name because I know who you are. I know where you come from, and I will give you a purpose if you allow me to take your story for my glory. Can you imagine what God can do if you give him your story, if you give him where you're at? He's not surprised where you are. He's not upset at you. What God is, he's calling you. He said, I have something better for you. I have a different life for you. If you allow me to change your story, I can show you something wonderful. But what you have to do is give me your story. You have to let go of who you think you are and let God tell you who you are. You got to let go of all that anger and that hurt that you might have and let God redeem that, because what is going to happen is God is going to tell you who you are, and then he will redeem your story. Once God redeemed my story at age 16, he started the whole process. I want to say that it was all easy from there. I want to say that it was all great and all wonderful, but that's not the case. It wasn't. It was still hard, but it was different. I still had some issues that I had to work through, but it was different. I still had concerns and worries, but it was different. And it was different because it was no longer my story. He put me in the middle of his story. There's no way I should be on this stage. There's no way I should have a beautiful wife and all those kids. There's no way I should have any of that. But I allowed God to redeem my story. So I don't know where you are. I don't know your story. My story is not the worst story ever, but it is my story. If you're looking for purpose, if you're looking, wondering who you really are, if you want to know if there's someone that loves you or someone that cares about you, I'm going to tell you right now that yes, God does. God sat with me all those nights that I felt unlovable. God sat with me all those times that I cried wondering why. God sat with me in my pain when I was angry and I didn't know where to go. And then when the time was right, God found me in the middle of nowhere at a small little place. It wasn't this huge production. It was God's small, still voice saying, I know you. I know where you've been. And if you give me your story, I know where you're going. God redeems our story for his glory. Let me pray. God, I thank you that you redeem our story for your glory, that you take mess, God, and you can make something beautiful out of it, God, that you don't look at what we've done. If we give you our story, God, you can make something beautiful out of it, and no, we don't deserve it. God, you're way better to us than we deserve, but God, I thank you that you are. Thank you that you are the God that sees, that you are the God that cares, that you are the God that knows, that you are the God that loves. God, you are the Alpha, you are the Omega, you are the beginning, you are the end. You know us from the day we draw our first breath until we see you face to face, and I thank you for that. God, if there's anyone in here who needs to have their story redeemed, God, I pray that they would find you, God, that they would slow down, that they would hear your voice, because just like you were calling me in that small place, God, you are calling them now. You have purpose for them, but they have to allow you to redeem their story. God, we thank you this morning. It's in your name that we pray. Amen.
Just